Am I wrong for getting upset at my husband for forgetting things that only I remember happening? Throwaway because my husband, 38 male, is on Reddit. I'm 35 female. We've been married 7 years, together for 10. Lately I feel like I'm losing my mind, and he says that's because I overthink everything, so here I am. It started small. I'd say, "Hey, you said you'd pick up the kids on Tuesday," and he'd laugh and say, "No, I didn't. You must be confused." I'd apologize and assume I mixed it up. Then it kept happening. I distinctly remember him telling me his parents were coming over last Saturday. I cleaned the house, canceled plans, cooked all day. When 6 p.m. rolled around and no one showed, I asked him what time they were coming. He stared at me and said, "What are you talking about? I never said they were coming." I told him I remembered the conversation clearly. He said it on Wednesday while I was doing dishes. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, "You really need to stop insisting things happen just because they feel real to you." That hurt, but I let it go. Then he started correcting my memories of arguments. I'd say, "You yelled at me last night," and he'd say, "I never raised my voice. You're being dramatic." Or, "You said I was a bad mother," and he'd reply, "I would never say that. Why would you make something like that up?" The worst was last week. We were supposed to attend my sister's birthday dinner. I reminded him that morning. He said, "I told you I couldn't go. You said you understood." I know that conversation never happened. I even checked my texts. Nothing. When I told him that, he smiled in this calm, pitying way and said, "This is what I mean. You don't remember things accurately. It's worrying." I started crying and told him I felt like I was going crazy. He hugged me and said, "I just want you to get help. This isn't normal." Since then, I've been writing things down. I take notes after conversations. I screenshot texts. I check my calendar constantly. Yesterday, he found my notebook and asked why I was documenting imaginary slights. I snapped and told him I feel like he's manipulating me and making me doubt myself on purpose. He got very quiet and said, "Wow. So now I'm the villain because you can't trust your own memory?" Now he's barely speaking to me and told his mother that I'm struggling mentally. She called to ask if I was seeing a doctor. So, am I wrong for accusing my husband of gaslighting me instead of accepting that maybe something is wrong with me? Update. Am I wrong for accusing my husband of gaslighting me? Hi, everyone. I honestly didn't expect my last post to get the attention it did. A lot has happened, and I wish this update went in a different direction. After reading the comments, I decided to see a doctor. Not because I suddenly believed my husband, but because so many people said, even if he's gaslighting you, rule out medical causes. I figured if nothing else, I'd have proof. The doctor took me seriously right away. I described the memory gaps, the confusion, the emotional swings, and how convinced I was that conversations were happening that no one else remembered. She ordered an MRI to be safe. They called me back the next day. I have a brain tumor. It's benign, but it's pressing on an area associated with memory and emotional regulation. The neurologist explained that it can cause very vivid false memories, emotional certainty, and paranoia, especially toward people close to you. When she said that, my stomach dropped. It felt like someone pulled the floor out from under my entire sense of reality. Suddenly, everything made horrible sense. The conversations I knew happened. The absolute certainty. The feeling that I was being manipulated. The notebook. The screenshots. The fear that I was losing my mind. I was. When I told my husband, he cried. Like, full-on sobbing. He said he'd been terrified for months watching me change, insisting on things that never happened, accusing him of lying. He admitted he probably handled it badly by being dismissive instead of pushing harder for medical help, but he said he truly thought he was losing me. That hurt, because in my head he was the villain. We're talking about surgery options now, and the prognosis is good. The doctors are optimistic that once it is treated, my symptoms should improve significantly. I've reread my original post, and it is chilling. From my perspective, I sounded so reasonable, so clear, so sure. And that's the scariest part, how real it all felt. To everyone who told me to trust my instincts, I get why you said that. But to those who gently suggested medical testing even while validating my feelings, thank you. You may have saved my life. So, I guess the answer is not wrong. I was not being gaslit. My brain was lying to me. And that's a sentence I'm still trying to accept. Final update. 18 months later, am I wrong for accusing my husband of gaslighting me? It's been 18 months since my last update, and I wanted to close the loop, for myself as much as for anyone who's followed along. I had surgery 3 weeks after my previous post. The tumor was removed successfully, but recovery was not the neat, movie version miracle I hoped for. The doctors warned me it could take months for my brain to rewire itself. They were right. It took a year. The first few months were the hardest. I didn't wake up fixed. My memory was spotty, my emotions were raw, and the confidence I once had in my own perceptions was completely shattered. Imagine realizing your brain betrayed you, and then being expected to trust it again. Every thought felt suspect. Every disagreement made me freeze. I'd constantly ask, did that really happen? Or is that how you remember it too? My husband became my anchor, but it wasn't easy for either of us. There was a lot of grief we hadn't processed. I had to mourn the version of myself who trusted her mind without question. He had to mourn months of being seen as a manipulator when he was actually watching his wife disappear. We did couples therapy, individual therapy, and neurological follow-ups. Progress was slow and not linear. There were setbacks. Days where I was convinced I was slipping again. Nights where I woke up panicking that none of this, my recovery, my marriage, my memories, was real. My husband learned to ground me gently instead of correcting me bluntly. I learned to ask for reassurance, without shame. About 6 months in, something shifted. I realized I'd gone an entire week without checking my notebook. I stopped compulsively verifying texts. I could disagree with my husband without spiraling into fear that one of us was lying. My laugh sounded like mine again. Now, a year later, I'm back at work part-time. My memory isn't perfect, but it's mine. The doctors say this may be as good as it gets, and I'm okay with that. I've learned to live with humility about my own mind and compassion for others' perspectives. I reread my original Am I Wrong post recently. I cried, not out of embarrassment, but grief for that woman who was so scared and so sure she was being harmed. She wasn't stupid. She wasn't cruel. She was sick. If there's anything I want people to take from this story, it's this. Feeling certain doesn't always mean being correct. And being wrong doesn't mean you're broken or bad. As for my husband and me, we're still together. Stronger, but changed. We communicate differently now. More patience. More checking in. Less assuming. Life didn't go back to normal. But it did become real again. And after everything, that's more than enough.